What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am Dave Smith. He is Robbie the Fire Bernstein. We are home for a brief window. How are you doing today, sir?
I've never enjoyed being outside of Appleton this much in my whole life, Dave Smith.
The shows were a lot of fun. We met some great people out there. The shows were a great time. Appleton, not a lot going on.
I loved that comedy club. I think perhaps I'd like to try and film there someday. It was really a great comedy club. But my God, I think I might be done with Wisconsin. It might be, there's something about the energy of that state that just forces you to drink until you leave. It's like the opposite of spiritual energy.
If somebody was to tell me, they were like, you know what, I'm quitting drinking. I'm never going to drink again. I'd be like, that's good for you, man. It's probably a healthy decision, you know, always better to do it. I mean, I love drinking, but it's probably better not to, you know? And they were like, yeah, that's it. I'm never going to drink again. And they were like, I live in Appleton, Wisconsin. I'd be like, okay, that's retarded. All right. First of all, it's impossible. It's impossible to be done. You cannot do it there. And second off, why would you? Why would you not drink there? Again, lovely people, really enjoy it. Had a great time at the if you are out in that area, go to the Skyline Comedy Club, right? Skyline?
Yeah, that was the name of it.
That was it, right? Yep, Skyline Comedy Club, great place. They got to meet a lot of cool people out there, so it was a lot of fun. Had trouble getting out there, but I made it.
And I got porches this weekend, everybody.
Ooh.
I'm out in Washington, D.C. I'm out in Virginia Beach. Here, I got look at all these porches, Davey Smith. I got so many.
Whoa!
You can't even see all of them because of the view. But anyways, a lot of porches. And then next weekend is Virginia Beach, Washington, D.C., and somewhere out in Jersey. And then the following weekend, run of Texas shows, Rockport, Texas, Austin, Texas, and San Antonio, Texas. There you go.
Hell yeah, man. That's awesome. And then, of course, our next date together will be Salt Lake City. At Wise Guys out there, which is a great club too. So looking forward to being back there. And of course, the event is sold out. However, they will be live streaming the debate, the great libertarian immigration debate, the day after tomorrow at the Soho Forum. Really looking forward to this. This is going to be a cool one. Maybe not as high profile as some of the other debates that I've done, but I do think that it's a really important one. And I think within the libertarian world, this is kind of a big, you know, it's just a very important topic. Obviously, not only one of the most important topics in general is immigration, but it's been, you know, either number one or number two, probably the most consequential policy areas in terms of, you know, getting Donald Trump elected. And I think it's really something it's important that libertarians get right on that issue. So I'm excited to make the case for why libertarians ought to reject open borders and embrace immigration restrictions. Common sense. Just good old-fashioned common sense immigration restrictions. I'm going to give my pitch
before the show for open borders, but more opportunities for common folk to exploit Mexican labor. So,
well, Rob's also, you know, Rob might win the debate before I even get on stage.
They give me 6 minutes up front to supposedly tell jokes, and I'm going to make my pitch for better distribution of exploiting Mexican labor.
Well, there you go. I look forward to hearing that as well. So that should be a fun one, and I'm sure I'll see a lot of you guys out there at that event. So looking forward to it, and we're doing an after party at Gene's place. So come on out and party with me and Rob. Party with us in our at an economist's loft where things get truly crazy. Okay, so for today's show, there's a lot going on. I believe as we speak, maybe it wrapped up, but Donald Trump is in negotiations with Vladimir Putin, direct negotiations between the two of them. That's very interesting. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about what comes of all of this. Of course, it was also announced that Joe Biden has cancer yesterday, which is another interesting development. And you know, look, aside from anytime anyone has cancer, it's sad. Of course, politicians aren't people, but it's still sad. Even when politicians get cancer, it is, in terms of the actual significance of it. I have a tough time working up too much sympathy for anybody whose career was what Joe Biden's was. But in terms of the political relevance of it, I think one of the things that's just kind of interesting is that it's like one more. You know, do you remember, Rob, back in the day, you ever watch like like the Warner Brothers cartoons, like Bugs Bunny and all them. And there'd be one thing where like one of the cartoons would have like Tom and Jerry, or one of them would have like a million things stacked up and they're barely holding on to it. And then like a feather comes in and just floats on the pile. And that's what breaks the whole thing. It does seem almost like that, with just of the people who were actually arguing not that long ago that this guy should still be president, that he would be 120 days or whatever it is into his second 4 years, when he was so clearly in no position to like medically be able to do that, is just one more thing of like another crisis that the nation would have faced if these insane people had gotten their way. So that's kind of my only thought on it. But anything you want to add?
From what I understand, it was a obscure medical event because he had a broken prostate inside of his brain, and
Yes.
that's usually not the way the prostate works, where you also have dementia. That's just usually not the way it works. But in this instance, he's one of the few cases where the broken prostate was, ruining his intellect.
Yeah. No, the doctor found it while he was fingering his ear, and he was like, "Something's not right in here." All right.
And by the way, if you put it up to the nation to decide if Joe Biden had won and then had to step down, I feel like the country would vote for his broken prostate over Kamala Harris.
He's still at this point still a better candidate than she is somehow. All right, so I wanted to start off a little bit by talking about this Fox News interview with Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, which was very interesting. To interview with the number 1 and number 2 people at the Justice Department, or excuse me, at the FBI. And okay, one of the things that was so interesting about this, of course, to me, as people who listen to the show know, this has been probably the major theme of the last couple months for me, has been this idea that, Donald Trump has put into positions of significant power many people who were the loudest whistleblowers, if you will, about the crimes being committed by the U.S. federal government against the American people. And look, it's just when you look down the list of Tulsi Gabbard and Bobby Kennedy and Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, as well as others, Pete Hegseth in there, these are people who have been talking about, I mean, with different degrees of specialty, but pretty much they've all been talking about all of them, the crimes that were committed in the Russiagate hoax, with the COVID, unbelievable corruption and cover up during COVID, as well as, lying the country into wars and all of these things. And I think that, look, like as I've said many times on the show before, I think this is the appropriate framework to approach this conversation with. It's like, look, between just picking like some of the big ones, but between COVID, Russiagate, the Epstein child sex trafficking ring, and the wars that we've been lied into, the amount of crimes that have been committed by the government are just like enormous and profound. And then you have all of these people who have made names for themselves off calling out these crimes, now in positions of power, and yet still 120, 130 days in, we've seen no movement toward anyone being held responsible for them, not even exposing them any further, let alone actually holding someone accountable for these crimes. And so what was particularly interesting to me about this interview is that I believe this is the first time really I've seen some of those people being questioned about this a little bit. And so right off the bat, that to me is very interesting. And so we have a few clips here. I want to go through these and kind of respond to them. Go ahead, Rob.
I would just add one storyline is also the extent by which the deep state worked against Donald Trump, which is Crossfire Hurricane. It's potentially, if you want to get conspiratorial, maybe someone tried to assassinate him. And lastly, the tech censorship that took place, which included censoring him off of Twitter and the Hunter Biden laptop story, which probably would have won him the previous election.
Yeah, I mean that's an excellent point too. Those really, they commit so many goddamn crimes. It's hard to keep all of them at the top of your brain. But you're absolutely right that, and I think that's a good way to frame it. That there's kind of there's two elements here, right? There is the kind of like a lot of the stuff that was revealed during from the Twitter files. Which, don't get me wrong, a lot of that stuff came after Joe Biden was elected in terms of the details that were released. Not all of them. Some of them had to do with his transition team. And some of them, I believe, even had to do with his campaign team. But nonetheless, after exposing how involved the government was in big tech censorship, which of course goes back to 2016. This started. It was a result of Donald Trump winning. Is really what sparked the whole thing. But so we've not only found out that the government was intimately involved in censoring people off big tech platforms, and specifically like naming names and demanding individual people, Alex Berenson being the one that's coming to mind right now. But not only that, but then we also have the Hunter Biden laptop cover-up. And yes, when you put those two things together, man, it does feel like pretty blatant election interference. So again, these are legit conspiracies that are essentially undeniable at this point. Now, the Trump assassination ones, that's a little bit more complicated. I'm not claiming those are undeniable. There's certainly a lot of questions about them, and like very serious investigations should be done. Regardless of that, it's just there's like too much when it comes to how blatant and criminal so many of these very real conspiracies were. So anyway, let's go to the first clip here. Here is Kash Patel, FBI director, and deputy FBI director Dan Bongino in a Fox News interview.
You know what, Maria? Kash is not kidding. We've been personally briefed extensively on every single detail, nugget, tendril of this case. One is actively in court right now. So out of respect for the case, it's probably more appropriate that I stay quiet on that. However, I'm not going to tell people what they want to hear. I'm going to tell you the truth. And whether you like it or not is up to you. If there was a big explosive there, right? Given my history as a Secret Service agent and my personal friendship as a director does with the president, give me one logical, sensible reason we would not have. If you can think of one, there isn't. In some of these cases, the there you're looking for is not there. And I know people, I get it. I understand. It's not there. If it was there, we would have told you. You know what, Maria?
Oh, okay. Let's respond to this for a second. So look, I will preface this by saying I am somebody who has said very favorable things about both of the two guys on the screen there. I've been complimentary of Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. I was happy that both of them got appointed to the positions that they got appointed to. But again, just like Dan Bongino said, my job isn't to tell you what you want to hear. My job is to tell you the truth. My job is to give an honest reaction to this. However you feel about the Trump assassination attempts, this response by Dan Bongino is such bullshit. This is just garbage, dude. This is a non-response, non-answer, does absolutely nothing. To sit there and say that the onus is on us to explain why Dan Bongino wouldn't tell you if there's no there, when essentially his argument is, trust me. Why would I lie? Now I got to come up with the reason for why you might lie, which, by the way, if there's we all come up with immediate reasons. If you're just asking to speculate, can you even come up with a reason why I wouldn't tell you the truth? There's 50 in my head right now. Your family was threatened. You're part of it the whole time. You got corrupted when you got in there. They're not showing you the real information. There's just a million reasons why you wouldn't be telling us the truth. But this type of shit is not going to work. You can't just say, look, present people with what the answers are to the relevant questions. That's the way to handle this here. Not to simply say there's no there. Maybe there's not. Maybe there are answers to how some kid is able to get a clean shot at the president's head from 130 yards away. Maybe there's an answer for why we have videotapes of people something like an hour before the shooting happened talking about how this guy is up on the roof. Maybe there's an answer to how the roof was too sloped for the Secret Service to be able to get on it and yet not too sloped for this kid to get on it and get a shot off. Maybe there is an answer to all of that. Maybe there's an answer to how any young person is so radicalized that they'd go try to assassinate the president, but has no social media footprint. Because that sure sounds like it doesn't exist.
And some shady phone records.
Yeah, and what, like, oh, okay, fine. Maybe there's an answer to all of this, but the answer is not going to be accepted that anyone who gets in government goes, I've taken a look and I've determined it's nothing. Why would I lie? Look at me. It's me. It's old Danny Bongine. Why would I lie to you? Like, I'm sorry. That's just objectively that you got to come with something a little bit better than that. And, you know, to the people who are saying that, like, this in some way really demonstrates that there's no there. It's like, I'm sorry. No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. Any thoughts, Rob?
And then you also had the Ukrainian guy. The guy who was over in the Ukraine and then posted up outside of Donald Trump's the golf course to try and shoot him.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't heard any more details about that guy since. And what I thought was oddest about the first assassination attempt was Donald Trump's total unwillingness to even explore that our government or a government other than Iran was interested in assassinating him, and the possibility that perhaps pressure was of a deal was made behind closed doors of, all right, we missed you. You can stick around, but we need this. I'm just saying it seemed real odd the way that Donald Trump in interviews refused to say anything other than the Secret Service is great people.
One of the things that was particularly strange about it is that Donald Trump, the day that Donald Trump took that bullet to the ear, if you got to remember, this was a couple days before Joe Biden dropped out of the race. Joe Biden dropped out of the race as a result of that, every bit as much as he dropped out as a result of the debate. It was just like, oh my God, Donald Trump looked so strong and so badass, and coming off of how weak and frail Joe Biden looked, like the contrast was just too much. And everybody who follows politics that day was like, Donald Trump's going to win this election. There's just, it's almost like it looked like he was going to win before that, but after that, it was like, there's just no way he's not going to lose the election. Then they sub in Kamala Harris. Then they have the most astroturfed campaign ever, where they're trying to sell you that she is joy and hope and all this stuff. And then at least the polls, the public polls, were saying that she was up for weeks. And this was like Donald Trump almost allowed this story to rescind into the background rather than fanning the flames and keeping it alive, when it was so clearly in his political interest to keep everybody talking about that. And the way he easily could have kept them talking about that was just speculating, you know, going, hey, what, which he does with everything else. With everything else, Russiagate was a witch hunt by the deep state. All the trials were, Donald Trump would be the first to tell you, weaponizing of the justice system by a president who was his political opponent. Donald Trump never in his entire life, he was on the birtherism stuff about Obama. He was on the Muslims were cheering in the streets during 9/11. There was never a conspiracy that Donald Trump wouldn't fan the flames of if it was good for his political, desires. And by the way, I'm not, well, with a couple of those. I mean, I never thought the birtherism thing made too much sense, and I didn't think the Muslims cheering, but like with the Russiagate stuff and the weaponization of the political, the judicial system, that made total sense. But not with this one. When it's so shady and everybody's wondering, everybody's like, hey, what really happened there? And the fact that he doesn't touch it. He doesn't even say, like, we're going to get to the bottom of this and know what happened. I don't know. Seems a little bit strange. That's all I'm saying. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Proton Mail. Proton Mail is an email service developed by Proton to replace your Gmail account for all of your important stuff so that you can have a more secure emailing experience. Your Gmail is full of junk anyway after all these years. Why not start over, have a reset with Proton Mail, and then you'll be going forward with more security and peace of mind. Proton will always have a freemium version, and you can later change to a paid product if you're convinced about the product. But right now, you can go create a product for free, and you can continue using Gmail for garbage, but use Proton Mail for all your important stuff. Check them out today, Proton Mail. All right, let's get back into the show. All I'm saying is that if Dan Bongino is going, like, if you want to take the position, which is fairly reasonable, if you want to say, like, look, we've been talking about a lot of crimes that have been committed by the government over the last 10, 15 years. There are many. Not every conspiracy theory is correct, and not everything, you know what I mean? And we're going to get to the bottom of this. The way to do that would be to, number one, do something about the criminals that you've already said you know exist. Actually have some type of like transparency and accountability for those people involved, and then release actual information on this stuff. But what Dan Bongino just did, like this, I'm going to get here and tell you nothing to see there. And you know that because it's obviously me. And the proof is that I'm the one telling you that. And really, it's on you to explain why I wouldn't tell you that if I wasn't. Like, this is like non-arguments mixed with circular logic. You might as well not even say anything. This is not even beginning to address anything. So that's my feeling on that first clip there. All right, let's move over to the other clip that I sent where they're discussing Jeffrey Epstein as well as some other topics.
Which we were supposed to have all the details on that months ago, and then a bunch of folders were handed off to influencers with Pam Bondi saying, if you had seen what I had seen, and then not presenting us what she had seen, but hey, most transparent administration, cleaning up the deep state.
Yeah, like it's, I'm sorry, it's just too ridiculous. All right, here we go.
Actually happened on January 6th.
So there is, as it seems that I find myself in a similar situation as Russiagate, because on January 6th in the prior Trump administration, I was the chief of staff to the Department of Defense, and I spent 4 years in a minor fortune litigating the truth because people politicized what actually happened on January 6th. And we now know unequivocally that President Trump lawfully authorized the deployment of National Guard, and me as the head of the Office of Secretary of Defense with the Secretary of Defense took that action. When it finally came in, because it had to have the governor and mayor of DC's approval on it. That's the way the law works. And once it finally came in on January 6th, remember, we offered to them days beforehand, and they rejected it. We've put out the letters, and your show has done great coverage showing how it was rejected. We mobilized the fastest cold start in Washington, D.C. since World War II, and the largest occupation of D.C. by the National Guard since the American Revolution. That's what happened on January 6th. But what you and your viewers want to know, now that we've beat back that disinformation campaign with actual truth, is what was the FBI doing? Well, we got answers coming. We just found a trove of information, and it's on its way to Capitol Hill right now. And they've asked, and they're getting them, and you're getting answers on January 6th. You're getting answers on what sourcing was utilized, what money was utilized, how many assets were utilized, who made those decisions. You're getting it. We can only control the FBI, but you're getting it from the FBI.
Were there FBI agents undercover egging people on?
Like I said, that answer is coming, and it's on its way to Congress.
You're about to, I saw it. I saw the portfolio of information. We dug far and wide to find it. And I'm pretty sure now we have a conclusive, definitive answer. But you and the public are going to have it. You're going to see it in writing over to Capitol Hill. But I just want to be sure we're clear, having been an agent and a police officer. There is a difference between an agent. I know you know this. I don't mean to sound ridiculous. An agent, meaning a trained GS 1811 federal agent, and a source or an asset. There's a difference. So when you see the material, which I promise you is coming, again, I'm not asking you to trust us. I know it's coming because I saw it yesterday. When you see it, I just want you to understand that it's not an apology
important.
for anything.
Thank you.
But
That's
there's
important.
a difference between agents and assets.
Yeah.
And I just hope when
All right. The thing is, when you're not just asking someone to trust you, you don't have to say, I'm not just asking you to trust me, because you can point to something and show them, look, I'm not just asking you to trust me. Look at this. But you don't have anything to look at. And so, listen, I'm objectively speaking, yes, you're just asking us to trust you. That's exactly what's going on. And if you notice, they didn't say this. Well, they did. They go, this information is on the way to you. By you, they mean Capitol Hill. And so, look, I know there's people out there, the trust the plan people will always be telling me, just be patient and trust the plan. Okay. There's nothing I'm doing that conflicts with my patience. I will still be happy for any of this information if it comes out. But it does, Rob, I mean, this whole thing here, I'm sorry, this is, again, it's a non-response. There's nothing here. Oh, we've seen it and there's some stuff. And whoo, when you find out about it, you're going to be like, man, that was some stuff. And then at the end, what is this like? I'm sorry, and this really is one of the problems. I remember this was I forget exactly how this went down, but I remember years ago during the Russiagate days, Rob, which were that was really when you first came on the show. That was the Russiagate day, our first few years of doing this podcast together. That was the big thing. I mean, we focused on that more than anything else. All these, obviously I've always been known, for the anti-war stuff. But since then, we became kind of known for COVID and Ukraine and Biden and, all this other stuff. Obviously the Israel-Gaza thing has become a big one for me. But there was a time when that was kind of our calling card. The issue that we were associated with the most was calling bullshit on the Russiagate nonsense. And I remember there were a bunch of people. Buck Sexton was a former CIA employee. He was also really great on the Russiagate stuff. And a lot of times people would say, they'd be like, dude, Dave, you and Buck are the ones who are the best at breaking this down. And I remember one time, I don't remember if we played the clip on the show or how it was, but so he does this whole thing. Buck Sexton, who I really like, by the way. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I always really like that guy. But he does this whole thing, and this is because he's a former CIA agent. This is kind of how he views it, is that he would go through all this shit, and he's just dead right about everything, just breaking apart how crazy the whole Russia-Trump collusion bullshit story was. And then at the end of it, he goes, and the worst part of all of this is that trust in the FBI and CIA has been completely lost and may never be recovered. And I thought it was kind of interesting because it was you're with someone 99% of it, you completely agree with them. And then their conclusion from it is 180 degrees the opposite of your conclusion. I would take all of the things he said, but then I'd say the only silver lining in this is that trust in the FBI and the CIA has been destroyed. And, someone could seem really, really good if they're good on everything up to that point, but there is a real problem if that's their takeaway. And you can already see this is what Dan Bongino's preempting. He hasn't shown us anything, and yet he's going, hey, just remember, priority number one is don't confuse assets with agents. So what? We protect the reputation of the agents? How about if the FBI had assets there, not agents, but had assets there who were stoking January 6th, how about my reaction can just be screw the FBI? Why is my big concern here to make sure that I don't blame the agents? I don't blame the agents. They're only guilty of having assets to foment a fucking fake coup so that they could then run with that as the major story for the next couple years. And by the way, if you remember back, use it as the centerpiece for launching a domestic war on terrorism and shutting down right-wing dissidents in the country. That's what it was used for. So, I'm sorry, if they did that, why do you have to send this information to Congress? Release it to the people. Have Trump declassify it. Release it right to us. I'm sorry. The problem with the trust the plan people is that I've just been through this so many times and the plan never ends up coming to fruition. So how about right now, when you actually have the power to do the right thing? Don't sit here and tell me to trust you, which even if you say you're not saying that is exactly what you're saying objectively. What am I missing here, Rob?
I don't think you're missing anything, but just go a little bit further with what you were saying. First is on the remember that informants aren't agents, which that could also be why you purposely don't have them on the books as agents.
Right.
So the fact that you have informants on the ground and they're the ones, maybe you have evidence that they were actually provoking what was happening, and you got the plausible deniability that they weren't agents, that means close to nothing to me. You're basically just saying we orchestrated this in a way so that if things like this happen, we can go, well, that wasn't their directives from us. All right, fine, great. You got a system where you always have plausible deniability and you're reinforcing it. Listen, you know, I hope that they make good on all these storylines, and I think if there's enough public pressure, perhaps they will. But there's just another aspect that they're not even delving into here, because basically they're saying, listen, I understand everyone's concerned about January 6th. We got this new evidence. We just handed it over. What about just all the conversation about the amount of resources that went into prosecuting January 6th? There's a lot of crimes in this country that happen every single year, and a lot of them never go punished. We saw a lot of riots that happened in liberal areas with liberal people. Nobody got in trouble. And for some reason on the January 6th one, a lot of FBI resources went into, let's put all of them into jail. And so I would think part of the storyline would be, who was making those decisions? How many resources got put into it? How many other things weren't taken care of? How many kids got child trafficked because the FBI was using all their time dealing with who was trespassing on January 6th? And then if you've also got a little bit of even a loose storyline of our informants were there and doing it, I don't know, how much of an investigation are you guys doing into whether or not there was a coordinated effort to create this false domestic terrorism title so that you could further prosecute the American people without due process? I mean, unless you're going to have that conversation, you are not serious about this.
Well, that's exactly right, Rob. You're exactly right. Because look, if you think about it, even the kind of, whether intentional or unintentional, the limited hangout that Kash Patel is giving you, which is that like, oh, I know for a fact that we wanted all this extra security to be there and that they turned it down. Well, the only reason why that's an interesting nugget is like, well, why did they do that? What you're saying before the fact, they wanted there to not be enough security here? Oh, it kind of seems like they wanted an incident to happen. Okay, well, what other prongs were involved in this then? And if you're telling me that they intentionally didn't want the security, then had provocateurs there, and then the entire media went into overdrive about January 6th, and literally you had political leaders out there repeating the script that it was worse than the 9/11, that it was another Pearl Harbor, right? Wasn't that Kamala Harris's line or something like that? It's like, okay, what you're saying is pointing to this huge conspiracy. Also, how about like the whole thing where there were those
pipe bombs,
those mysterious, the mysterious package bombs that happened to be planted that same day that then just we're just supposed to forget that ever happened?
They don't even have the dignity to lie to me and go, we're having a massive investigation here. No one's answered for the pipe bombs yet. We'd like to know the relationship between media and Ray Epps and as to why that individual was given a sweetheart plea deal, and that while the media was egregiously saying that everyone else needs to be in jail, why is the right wing of America giving a hard time to this person? We'd like to know why. We've looked at a lot of the footage. We want to know why some doors were opened when they were opened. We've got a lot of things that we need to uncover here, and that's why we're looking into it. At least that is a good lie, because you're pretending like you care. But when you're not even making a conversation about actually looking to at least debunk the conspiracy that the government was purposely involved in January 6th to try and make Trump look bad and potentially have a domestic terrorism title to go after people like us, I don't know. It just doesn't sound like you guys are that serious about this topic.
Yeah, and like somebody, please go make a compilation of all the stuff these guys were saying about this over the last few years. Because it's like, it seems to me like you can't look, if what Kash Patel is saying is just something like, oh, this was just incompetence. Like Nancy Pelosi and these guys, they didn't want the Metro Police there, and you know, like they didn't even think it would be a thing. And then look at them, but it seems pretty clear that Kash Patel is fanning the flames of a little bit more than just that, right? So like, but you can't do that anymore if you're the FBI director, or you got to admit that like there's a power structure that goes way beyond the FBI director here. You know what I mean? Like I don't have the power that you think I would. But if you're still Mr. Truth Teller and you guys can still say, no, listen, you could trust me because this is me here. Well, then like, what are you saying? You're saying they didn't want the backup there. Why not? That seems like the point of you bringing it up is that this indicates a much wider conspiracy. But if that's the case, then I'm sorry, but you're just going to say, oh, we're sending some documents to Congress. Okay. Like, yes, Rob, if you were right, if you're going to lie to me, or if you think you're telling the truth, whatever, tell me something. Give me a date by when I can expect to know this stuff. When is it going to be released to the public? When will we have the answers to this? When will we need to remember the difference between agent and asset? What is there or if, like you said, if they were going to say, hey, we're launching this real deal investigation, something, but this is just kind of nothing. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Hexclad. If you've been trying to eat healthier by cooking at home and not always going out or not eating microwavable meals, you need some good pots and pans. And that's where Hexclad comes in. I will tell you personally, they sent a couple pounds over to us. My wife loves them, and she is a pound snob. So this is good quality stuff here. Go check them out. Hexclad has completely revolutionized pots and pans by combining the performance of stainless steel with the convenience and easy cleanup of non-stick. But Hexclad's innovation doesn't stop there. Their Japanese Damascus steel knives are as sharp as they are tough, perfect for leveling up your meal prep. Their sleek pepper mill lets you season like a pro with precision and style. And for a limited time, our listeners are getting 10% off their orders with our link. Just head over to hexclad.com/problem. And for a limited time, our listeners will get 10% off your next order, but you got to go to hexclad.com/problem. Of course, make sure to support the show and let them know that we sent you. Go check them out, hexclad.com/problem for 10% off your next order. All right, let's get back into the show.
Hey, maybe it's like the Epstein Pam Bondi thing. That
well,
they
yeah.
just need more time for the FBI to sit through it, and it's not that they're trying to clean up the record or redact it all, and no one's ever been more serious about giving us this information and the transparency. But
and wasn't Pam Bondi saying the same thing about Epstein? We need more time now. Like after she got pushed back because those influencers had nothing. Oh, give it time. It's coming. It's like, oh, all right. We have been giving you time. I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not unreasonable with this shit. I'm still Trump's negotiating with Putin today. I hope he fucking negotiates an end to this war. I'm not sitting here and going, hey, you said day 1 it would be done, and now it's day 130 and it's still not done. Like, all right, I understand it's not going to be done on day 1. When are we looking at this, guys? This isn't something like negotiating an end to a war where you need the other person to get on board with the negotiations. It's like, release it. By the way, I was wrong when we led that up. That wasn't the Epstein one. I think it was one of the ones that Rob sent, Natalie. I think it was one of those was the Epstein one, because that one's worth playing also. You
can trust them once again. They're experts, and they've seen something that they can't show us, but they've seen. But just trust them.
Yeah, it's the last one that Rob sent, Natalie. Let's play that one.
They're trying to get some of that Donald Trump divinity credit of just, listen, typically speaking, don't trust government. And when they say something, it's good to ask clarifying questions and look for the evidence, except with Donald Trump, in which case you're just, what do they say? You just got Trump derangement syndrome if you'd like to see the evidence on things. If you just ask the typical questions you would ask a government and go, hey, can I ask a clarifying question? Do you have a reason behind that? Do you have some evidence to that? If you ask that about Donald Trump, it's that you just don't pay tribute to his divinity.
Then they said
the derangement syndrome.
Hold on one second. Natalie said that
it should be a quick find. Working. It was floating around. If you just do Kash Patel, Epstein killed himself, you should be able to find it very quickly.
Here, I'll find it. Here, I'll send it over to you now, Natalie. Here you go. I just texted it over to you. Go because this one to me was like one of the real interesting ones that I just thought like we kind of had to play this and respond to it. Because look, I'm not trying to jump to conclusions about Bongino or Cash Patel. Like I said, I like both these guys. I've said nice things about them. I supported both of them.
Trying to jump to the back of his head.
It does look like it's been frightened by something. But you're like, look, guys, like, I'm just telling you what I'm looking at here. And it looks like, okay, these guys who have been calling out this stuff are on the inside now. And now, rather than actually giving us any information, they're just downplaying all of this stuff. That's what it seems like to me. Here, let's play this one.
Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
Can you just even pause here?
He killed himself.
You might as well play it through because it just it looks retarded. It's a bad
again. You want me to? I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
I know it's hard work. You said Jeffrey Epstein committed
when,
suicide.
when Cash says, well, you can see inside. Well, we can't because the tapes were turned off. So you can't. So what exactly is this new specific evidence? Because we did have this guy who seems to be an intelligence asset who, after they lost that freedom of information thing about the prosecution, suddenly the FBI turns around and goes, yeah, we got to get this guy. Then they get him in jail. They take the safe out of his apartment. It magically disappears. And then this guy's in jail, and magically all the cameras turn off when he decides to kill himself in his own cell. And all that you have to say, well, trust me, because I looked at, what did you look at? What did you see? There are no tapes. You look at the report about the prison guards who were napping and, playing with their crumbs in the pot, in the whatever they were doing, reading some old nudie magazines.
Look, it all just comes down to trust me. They're saying nothing. They're sitting there saying it's. I mean, I know the other clip they were like, oh, I'm not saying just trust me, but they're like, look, people are entitled to their opinion. I know the case. I've seen the case. He killed himself. What the fuck is that? Listen, I mean, again, what we know about Jeffrey Epstein, right? And with all these intelligence operations, very rarely are we ever going to find out all of the details or know the entire story. But we know more than enough to know that this thing stinks to high heavens. I mean, the guy is, if you just go through his life, it's like the guy is with like no credentials. He's a teacher at Dalton, like the most like privileged private school in Manhattan, where he gets a few complaints from young girls who are there. Then he winds up at Bear Stearns, and within like a year and a half, he's like on partner level. He's worth a ton of money, involved in the biggest deals, and it's nobody knows how he made his money or who he was involved with. He's connected to a lot of people who have connections to intelligence themselves. We know that when he is first caught, the prosecutor says we gave him a sweetheart deal because he was connected to intelligence. We know that he is connected to like all of the people at the top levels of politics and culture and business. And we know that his file is largely redacted for national security reasons. Why the hell would a pedophile ring need to have redacted information for national security purposes? And yes, we also know that the way he died is incredibly suspicious, with being like in this maximum security prison where he should be the most untouchable person. And then you have multiple camera failures and he commits suicide after being assaulted in jail. And then, multiple people claiming that he believed he was getting out and was not at all suicidal. Now, to be very clear, and I think this is true at the heart of the Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself meme, I don't actually think necessarily that anyone is strictly saying there's no way the guy killed himself. I'm open to the idea that Jeffrey Epstein did kill himself. I don't think he did it on his own volition. Like, I don't think there's nothing more to the story there. But I'm sorry, like, dude, like, if at my house, right, I got a ton of cameras around the property on my house. If all of my cameras went off and then you found me having committed suicide there, you'd be like, yo, something here happened. That's like too weird that would happen right in concert with this happening. But again, Patel and Bongino here are doing nothing. They're not telling us we're going to get more. They're not even saying what they said about the January 6th stuff. They're not even going, oh, information is on its way to Congress. They're just like, no, didn't happen. I know what I'm talking about. I looked at it. I saw it. This is worse than not saying anything about it. It's worse than just not commenting on it again. To get together, be asked this question, and have nothing other than like, no, he did. Nah, he did. I mean, come on. Like, what are we supposed to think about this? And I see a lot of people on Twitter, being like, nah, give them time. These are the good guys. They're in there. It's like, okay, fine. But to anyone who's making that argument, just give me a specific amount of time. How much time do I have to give them? And at what period in time, when we don't get the answers to any of this shit, and I'm not saying we don't get the answers we want. If you're telling me these are not conspiracies, but then fine, then give us the evidence that they're not, But if that doesn't happen, and we're left knowing exactly what we were left 130 days ago about Epstein and January 6th and all of this stuff, when do you admit that the plan isn't working? That's a question for my follow the plan people out there. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Crowd Health, a longtime sponsor. I love this company. Let's just start by asking, is anyone out there really thrilled with their healthcare insurance provider? Nobody? Yeah, that's right. The answer is always nobody. And we know the reason. It's a broken system, largely because of government intervention. But now there is an alternative to health insurance, and that is Crowd Health. Crowd Health is a decentralized healthcare payment system that frees you from the tyranny of health insurance. It's significantly less expensive than health insurance. They cut out the middlemen. Some say that's upward of 40% of the costs of health insurance. With Crowd Health, singles are about $185 a month. A family of 4 is $605 a month. And if you use the promo code POTP, you can get $99 a month per person for the next 3 months. Crowd Health is not health insurance. It's a totally different way of paying for healthcare. Terms and conditions may apply. Just remember, head over to joincrowdhealth.com and make sure to use the promo code POTP to get that deal, $99 a month per person for the first 3 months. All right, let's get back into the show. But I don't know. Anything else on this, Rob? It's just, to me, it's disappointing isn't even the right word, but it's just like, it's a lot meet the new boss type energy.
And by the way,
this is what you get.
I would just say, at a minimum, the storyline that the government was working against Donald Trump and the American people is a sexy storyline. Why are you abandoning it? It's partly how you won the election. People were really into that storyline of, hey, the government's working against this guy that I voted for. What's going on here? Can we get this thing cleaned up? And that's kind of part of their pitch to the American people, was that they were going to do so. When they get in, and then it's just, no, everything's fine here. It was all good. We're moving forward. I don't know. They seem to be channeling to me that uprooting the deep state and looking into what they did to Donald Trump is actually not on their list of priorities. And it's interesting for them to abandon that because there's political capital in taking that one on. Yeah. They're working against their own interests to protect criminals in the government. Seems kind of fishy. Okay, I wanted to talk about this. I want to make sure we do this on today's show because I did find this to be a very interesting moment. So my friends, I should say, over at Flagrant had Bernie Sanders on the podcast, which was, this has been interesting. I obviously, as we've been talking about for quite a while, I'm very fascinated by the, the rise of the podcast world as the kind of dominant media. And I've been very interested in the recognition of that since the election. And of course, there's been stuff that we've talked about before on the show. Gavin Newsom starting his own podcast. Just recently, Pete Buttigieg went on Flagrant with Akash and Andrew Schultz, and that I did think was kind of an interesting development. It's kind of fascinating to me that they realize they have to play this game now, and I think that's one of the
the more monumental developments in politics over the last couple hundred days. And I think it's going to have a profound effect on politics and who can be a successful politician. Not necessarily that means that only the best will rise, but there is a certain type of person you have to be, like someone who can go on a podcast and grapple with Andrew Schultz and deal with the type of questions he's going to throw at you. And now they just had Bernie Sanders on, and it's kind of like a broader theme, but I remember getting in, I got in a few arguments, like behind the scenes arguments with people who are like pretty well-known figures in corporate media. And, they'd be saying like, oh, but this is horrible because, sure, the media has had some issues, but at least they have journalistic standards. And, look at Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn. They didn't ask Donald Trump enough tough questions or stuff. And while it is true that neither the Joe Rogan or Theo Vaughn interview of Donald Trump were like hard-hitting, confrontational grilling sessions, I've been saying for a while, it's still an enormous improvement over the corporate media having the monopoly on this stuff, because they also don't ask good questions. And at least now, with Theo Vaughn or something like that, you get to see Donald Trump. You get to learn a little something else about Donald Trump. With Joe Rogan, I thought when Joe Rogan asked him about the 2020 election, I thought it was the most powerful time he's ever been asked about that. And part of that is because he was just having an open, friendly conversation. And then when it came to it, he really just had nothing. He had nothing to back it up. And that was more exposed in a way than it would have been if some aggressive CNN anchor was asking him about it, and then he just dunks on CNN for being so terrible. And then, you know what I mean? Like it was more powerful, I thought, coming from Joe. Anyway, I did think this moment was really good evidence that I'm right. It's a weird way to preface it, but it is like you saw Andrew, who I give a lot of credit to, do a better job just in this moment, just in this clip. He did something that for all of the journalists who have been talking to Bernie Sanders over the last 8 years, I've never seen anyone get as interesting an admission out of him. So again, without further ado, let's play the clip and then me and you can discuss it, Rob.
The problem I think a lot of voters had is like they didn't even know if it was her. We didn't even know if Biden was president. We didn't even know if these were her talking points. And we felt that over the last 4 elections, Democrats, we felt that we didn't have a say on who could be president. We talk a lot about the Republicans being autocrats and oligarchs and taking over democracy, but from the Democrat perspective, and I'm a lifelong Democrat, I felt like the Democratic Party completely removed the democratic process from its constituents. And I think they need to have some accountability of that.
No argument here.
I donated for you. I mean, I wanted you to the 2016. I was like, this is going to happen. This guy's going to do it. And it felt like they stole it from me. And I'll be honest, it broke my heart when you supported him.
Look, but you have, in the world that I live in, you got a choice. And I mean, a lot of people, including my wife, agree with you. But you're down to a choice. Is it going to be Hillary Clinton or is it going to be Donald Trump? Not a great choice.
But it ended up being him anyway, so why don't we burn it down?
Well, because it's easy to say burning it down means that children are not going to have, food to eat, that the schools will deteriorate, people will not have health care.
I got it.
And I'm an elected official. I got to represent the people.
That's fair.
And I can't turn my back on.
But then could we not also say if ostensibly there hasn't been a fair primary for the Democrats since 2008, are they not also a threat to democracy? Yes. We often hear.
Fair enough. That is, yeah, I'm not going to argue with that point.
Holy moly. Is that not a fascinating little moment right there? I mean, you also see, this is one of the things about why I'm big on the collapse of the corporate media and the rise of podcasts, because look, you could sit here and say, and you like fairly could sit here and say, look, Akash and Andrew Schultz are not journalists. They're not, you know what I'm saying? Like these aren't people who went to school for this, but at the same time, they're both particularly bright people and they're both honest. And so Sometimes that's all it takes to just ask the obvious, honest question. And you could see actually here how like something really profound is revealed. And that's that Bernie Sanders has no response to this. Other than the most pathetic, like, well, kids aren't going to eat. Like, wait, what? Like, what are you even saying? The first of yes, you're right. We were forced into this false binary between Hillary and Donald Trump, but Trump won. Like, so kids still did eat, I think. But like he has to just admit, it goes, oh yeah, the Democrats are also a threat to democracy. Oh yes, they represent the oligarchy as much as you screaming about this oligarchy. And then look, to say that you got the election stolen from you and then turned around and shut up and supported that whole system. And then to go like, well, the problem is that if I didn't, Donald Trump might have won. Donald Trump won twice. I mean, look, I suppose there is an argument there, like on some Machiavellian level, that you could say, like, let's just say that you have two candidates and one candidate is preferable to the other. As bad as one is, the other one's still a little bit worse. And the one who's a little bit better screwed you over. And you're like, I'm going to bite my tongue on that and support them just because I think it's a little bit worse to not get that person in. Like, all right, you can say that. It's going to be pretty tough given some of the other things Bernie Sanders has said. But even if you're making that argument, once it didn't work and the worst candidate, in your view, got in twice, then you'd have to admit it's a mistake because you're making a purely utilitarian, or not pure utilitarian, you're making a purely consequentialist argument, and the consequence didn't even work out. So at that point, you'd have to go, yeah, you're right. I probably should have voted, I probably should have told the truth and not supported Hillary Clinton. And, Schultz gives him a little bit of wiggle room in a sense when he says burn it all down, because then Bernie Sanders can say, nah, listen, burning it all down, there's real people in that building. You can't burn the whole building down, which is like a reasonable response. But it's not, the question isn't necessarily to burn it all down. It's more like, so tell the truth. Tell the truth. You've been sitting out here for years talking about how Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, and you've never thought to add in the fact that so is your party? Like, until someone pushes you on it, and your response is, I can't argue with you.
At the
Can't
end
argue
of the
with you on
day,
that.
I'm a corporate guy. I get my marching orders, and I get paid pretty good. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't,
They
look,
cheated me, but so Hillary, that's the person on the team. I got to support her. So I get a check. I'm on a book tour now. Buy my book.
It just seems to me like, look, I'm not against. I've said this for many years. I never really voted for president too much, but I have said for many years, I don't think there's anything wrong with voting for the lesser of two evils. And of course, in this election, I did that. I'm not against the lesser of two evils argument. Less evil is preferable to more evil. And so there are appropriate times where supporting a lesser evil makes sense. But when the basis for doing it is that one guy represents a threat to democracy, and then when it's pointed out that both sides represent a threat to democracy, you have no argument, that does seem to call your judgment into question here.
I'm just here for a paycheck too. Might as well be what he said. They're literally calling him out. They're going, hey, your whole yelling is about about threats to democracy. You got cheated out of your process against Hillary Clinton. Then we had Bozo in chief with prostate cancer, and he just steps aside for Kamala Harris to run. Where's the democracy here? And the answer is there is none. But I'm not in the business of talking about that's the American people. That's not how that's not how I get my bills paid. So nope, that's not a cause I've been taking up. But I respect your criticism. It's fair.
And it is, I think, powerful that Schultz can say, like, as a lifelong Democrat, which I believe he was, I mean, I'm sure he's not lying about that, but like Schultz was always, I thought, like a pretty liberal guy. And like many liberal guys, he eventually just saw through the bullshit and was like, oh, everything that the Democrats say is fucking lies. And it's a huge story, especially it's a big part of why Donald Trump won the election. And it's a big part of why he's had more popular support in his second term than in his first. There's especially for someone like Bernie Sanders, who tried to play the role of truth teller. And this is what he was seen as by a lot of his supporters. It's just like, it's incredibly weak, particularly also when, he always, Bernie Sanders always had, much like I was saying with Kash Patel there, talking about how they wanted to make sure there was enough police presence there and the other guys didn't. It's like, yeah, but you're kind of like, when you say that, you're winking at something. You're suggesting a bigger conspiracy. Like, the suggestion there is not like, oh, they were so incompetent that they didn't realize they'd need more police. Like, if you just came out and said that, that'd be one thing. But what you're winking towards speculating is that they knew there'd be a problem and didn't want the police presence there because they needed the event to go off, right? I don't think I'm like adding too much into that. Well, likewise, Bernie Sanders would always say, he would stand up on stage when it was a one-on-one debate between him and Hillary Clinton. And he would say, I'm the only one on stage who hasn't taken money from the big banks. Like, he didn't even have the balls to like call her out. He would just say, I'm the only one, when there's only one other person on stage. It was the most ridiculous thing ever. And he would always say, like, these billionaires, they cut checks to politicians. You think they do that for free? Or you think they do that because they expect something in return? And you're like, okay, so then turn over to her and call her corrupt. Because what do you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't say that and then not have the follow through to be like, like, it's so weird standing on stage with one other person and going, I'm the only one who hasn't taken money from the big banks, and everyone who has is corrupt. No, I have respect for Senator Clinton. You'd be like, wait, what? Like, follow the logic. And so if you're saying, as you're kind of seem to be, that she is anti-democratic, that she is owned by the oligarchs, then you're going to have a tough time turning around and saying, yeah, but I could never say that. I could never tell the truth about that publicly. Just a tough position to be in. All right, we're going to wrap up on that. Guys, make sure go to porchtour.com. Come see Robbie on the road. Go to comicdavesmith.com to come see both of us on the road. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll catch you with a brand new episode. Tomorrow, instead of the normal 1 p.m. time, we will be streaming at 11 p.m. 11 p.m. tomorrow. We will go live to Part of the Problem. 11 a.m. tomorrow. 11 a.m. Rob, thank you for that catch. My mistake. 11 a.m., 1 hour before noon Eastern time. We will stream to partoftheproblem.com. Thanks, guys, for listening. Catch you next time. What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am Dave Smith. He is Robbie the Fire Bernstein. I hope everybody's doing good out there. How you doing, Rob? Coming to me from a hotel somewhere?
Yeah, I'm currently out in Charleston at the fine Holiday Inn Express. Let me say, thus far, this town is overrated. Everyone hypes Charleston. You do feel like a creep walking around here. They got like a college for models or something, and you're just like, I think I got to stay in my hotel. But
no, that's a good, like, just getting older and being a dude. It is where, like, there's a point in your life where, like, it's like young hot girls are around. That's like every boy's dream. And then, like, you just hit an age where you just like if there's young hot girls, you're like, I think I'm just gonna stay inside. I want to remove myself from this situation.
But coming to the end of Porches here, everybody. This was a fine run despite all the travel hassles, which I warn everyone, and I will let you know how bad it is. But this Wednesday, I'm outside of New Orleans. Then I got 2 last gigs out in Denver, Colorado, and that's it for the year. So if you're out in the New Orleans area, I got this cool bar outside of town, music venue. Go to porchtour.com. Come hang out.
Hell yeah. And then, of course, me and Rob, I know the first show is sold out. Last I had heard, there's some tickets for the second show. One night only, November 22nd, Poughkeepsie, New York. comicdavesmith.com for those links. Now, tell me, so as people who listen and follow our schedule may know, I've pretty much after touring the whole year, I've been off for these last few weeks. And that happens to be while there's the government shutdown. I've been hearing a lot of stuff. I'm supposed to get on a plane this Thursday to go to New Orleans. I mean, I'm assuming I'm going to find a way to get down there somehow. How bad was the airport situation for you?
Well, I'm here to let you know that we are just hostages in the government's game of trying to make the other team look worse. And, it's one thing when you want to take away people's health care or food stamps, but when you start delaying my flights, then I really take issue with it and say to government, figure it out. But Friday, just every single time I walked up to the gate, I got the text from them that they were delaying my flight another 2 hours. and they just kept doing that. And then yesterday, the flights that we had got canceled. I booked a new flight for Menuhin, who's opening up for me, and they kept delaying his flight. Finally canceled it, and he went on the line and he said he'd never seen so many angry white people since January 6th.
That's good. Well, we had a lot to be angry about that day, and a lot to be angry about today as well.
He said he just retreated and let the everyone else get angry. He said people were slamming on the desk. It was getting out of hand.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, I guess I'll be one of these guys. I'm going to end up being on a viral video somewhere on a Thursday.
Well, here's the problem. The airlines will take any excuse to not do their jobs, and they're not gracious about it. I paid a premium on a ticket that day on a flight that wasn't going to fly. But what they do is they just sell every single possible ticket that they can. And then at the last minute, they just decide what flights weren't going to make them money. And they go, oh, it's because we don't have enough air traffic controllers. I'm sure 90% of the cancellations don't even have anything to do with that. Not to mention, I don't understand why air traffic control is a government job. Just let the airlines do that and we won't have all this chaos. But the airlines are not gracious. They won't let you know when they're canceling your flights. They'll book you on the flight. They'll have you show up to the airport, and then they'll tell you at the last minute that it's the government's fault and you can't fly.
Yeah, no, it's pretty infuriating. Yeah, it's good. You got to just hate everybody involved in that situation.
Hitchhike to Skankfest. That's my recommendation.
There you do. Come hell or high water. We'll make sure we get there. Okay, so I want to talk about a few things on today's show. I got to start just with there's the same kind of theme of what we've been talking about for a bit on the show now, which is this really, I don't know, it's being dubbed the civil war on the right. I don't exactly think that's right. I think it's much more, it's much closer to like the Donald Trump phenomenon in 2016, where Donald Trump, if you turned on the news, you would think everybody just hates Donald Trump. And I'm talking about the Republican primary here. People kind of forget about this stuff because Donald Trump conquered the Republican Party and then he took over. But if you actually remember the primary process in 2016, there was National Review, which was the most prestigious, publication in Conservatism Inc. in the second half of the 20th century in America. It was like the home of William F. Buckley and all these people, right? The National Review came out with a front page cover that said "Never Trump," that had like all the staff members of National Review going, "We will support any other nominee except him." Mark Levin said, "I will never support Donald Trump. I'll support anybody else but him." Ben Shapiro, "Never support Donald Trump." All these guys who now are the biggest Trump dick riders, who will now turn around and criticize like me for being like, "Oh, you're critical of Donald Trump." They were all never Trumpers. In fact, Reince Priebus, who was the chair of the RNC at the time, floated out the idea of changing the rules at the convention, essentially requiring that you get a crazy higher number of delegates that no one could possibly get, and then just saying the convention can pick who the nominee is. He openly floated out just stealing the thing from Donald Trump, even though he won it. And if you remember famously, the next day, Donald Trump said, "Try it and there'll be riots in the streets, riots in the streets." And anyway, I bring up this dynamic because if you were, and even though 2016 isn't that long ago, a lot has changed since then. But if you were reading National Review or you were watching CNN, now believe it or not, I know you're listening in 2025. People used to do those two things. I know it's like you say that in 2025, you go, imagine you're reading National Review or watching CNN and people go, who's this joker talking about? No, that doesn't describe anybody. It did used to describe people. And if you were reading those or watching those things, it would be easy to go, oh, wait, Mitt Romney, the previous nominee, just gave a speech saying anyone but Donald Trump can be the nominee. Like this whole, now it might appear, oh, there's a civil war. There's a civil war amongst the Republicans, but that's not exactly right. And even as you would watch all of these guys tell you, this one, Donald Trump is the most radioactive candidate. He's the one you can't possibly have. It would dawn on people that he's number one in the polls. And not by a little bit, by a lot. Like Jeb Bush, the favorite, is now at 2%, and Donald Trump's at 60%. You know what I mean? Like he's dominating the polls. What actually ended up happening was that it wasn't exactly a civil war. It was the elite party establishment and their mouthpieces versus Donald Trump and 80% of the base. That's really what the dynamic was. And you might notice this again just during this whole last week. Tucker Carlson being made out to be Candace Owens being made out to be, oh, these are the people who need to be canceled. But then you might also notice that they're number one and number two, however exactly you want to measure it. And so it's like, no, this isn't exactly a civil war. This is very similar to 2016. And again, for the same reasons. It's the war party versus the people. It's a much more accurate way to characterize it than a civil war. This isn't like divided. It's not like if you just talk to random Republicans and go, hey, should we be sending a bunch of money overseas right now? No, we shouldn't. Like any more than the Republicans were divided on immigration. They're not divided on Tucker Carlson or Donald Trump for that matter. So anyway, that's one thing. And I would just say that I guess it's obviously this is it's very in our wheelhouse. Like this is the world that we exist in. And also on this show, I've kind of had like all of the people involved in this, well, at least all of the ones on a certain side of it. Happy to have the other ones on. Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, open invite. Come on out. Let's talk about it. But anyway, it's just, so there's been more going on with that. And it's hard not to talk about because it does seem to be so relevant, like much like with Donald Trump. While it's not a civil war, there is kind of like, to use the phrase that me and you maybe don't love the most, but like a battle for the soul of the right wing in America. It does seem like something like that is going on. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is The Wellness Company. Now, some of you may know about this pill called ivermectin. It became very popular during the pandemic, and about 58% of the world's ivermectin supply comes from China and 75% from Asia overall, but not the wellness companies. Introducing American-made ivermectin, safe, trusted, and produced right here in the United States. Ivermectin has been prescribed globally for more than 30 years and has even earned the Nobel Prize in Medicine for its proven ability to eliminate parasites and support overall health. New research also points to potential benefits for skin, immune system, and cancer support. Most pharmacies charge $5 a tablet, but the Wellness Company is offering a higher 18 milligram dose for just over $3 each. You'll get a 6-month supply designed for 4 21-day cleanse cycles, all at an unbeatable price. Support American medicine, not China's supply chain, and get your US-made ivermectin today at twc.health/problem. And make sure to use the promo code PROBLEM to save $30 off plus free shipping. That's twc.health/problem, promo code PROBLEM for $30 off and free shipping. All right, let's get back into the show.
It certainly just feels like censorship in the name of special interest, and I hadn't thought about it, but you're so right that it's early Donald Trump. It's the same thing as COVID. You're crazy for not getting the vaccine. They're trying to shame Republicans and go, all these people that you prefer listening to are not actually conservative, and they're dangerous to the party. It's just the new form of censorship. That's all it is.
Well, and you see that, right, Rob? Yeah, exactly. But you also see that when look, it's like, even if they'll say like, okay, here's our beef with Nick Fuentes is that he's said anti-Semitic things. And then you go like, okay, but Tucker Carlson doesn't have any of that baggage, right? And you're just as mad as him. So like, it seems like that's really not what it's about. Or they'll be like, Candace, digs into too many conspiracies that are unfounded. And you'll go like, okay, but then like, me and you don't really do that now, do we? Does anyone want to argue with us about any of our conspiracy? Like, what are our conspiracies, Rob, over the last 10 years together? Or that Trump wasn't a Russian spy? Like, what conspiracy is it that we buy into? That the vaccine wouldn't stop you from getting COVID and might actually like injure you? Is that a conspiracy? Like literally go and so even the people but they hate us just as much as they hate them too. So after a while, it is kind of hard to not go, it really seems to be that the issue here is like, these are the people against the war party. Seems to be the only thing that really explains all of it. And okay, so the latest chapter in this was that Megyn Kelly, who I got to say, I really do like Megyn Kelly. And I thought she was very reasonable in this, but so she had she was doing some event. I forget exactly who was it connected to Turning Point or something, or maybe it was just her own event. But she was doing an event, so she interviewed Tucker Carlson, and then the next day or later in that day, she interviewed Ben Shapiro. And the Tucker Carlson, we obviously already had him on the show, and he said some of the same things, but it was just obviously being correct. It's just not even, I don't know, just undeniably right about all this stuff. But there was this part with Ben Shapiro. So then Ben Shapiro comes on to essentially like struggle session Megyn Kelly for why she should be calling out the bigotry of all these other people. And there was this moment that happened here. Now, full disclosure, I did Liam McCullum's show the other day. I love Liam. I think he's great. Me and we hung out with him last time we were out in Montana, and he's great. You guys should follow Liam McCullough. Really, really sharp young guy. One of the best young guys in our space. And so we talked about this clip on there. I had to do this with you, Rob, and I had to do this on our show. So apologies to all you guys who saw that show, but we're going to go over the same one again because it's just too wild. So let's play that, and then me and Rob will respond. But here is Ben Shapiro. Try to keep up with this here. Here's Ben Shapiro trying to get Megyn Kelly to condemn Tucker Carlson. And wait for it, Rob. Here's why.
My point is that that's not his point. And again, none of this.
So we disagree.
We disagree on the interpretation of what Tucker has been doing for the past 2 years. And it's very difficult for me to believe that Tucker is merely anti-Israel when, for example, today in his newsletter, I can directly quote it if you'd like, in his newsletter today, he claimed that Zoran Mamdani is not anti-Semitic. This was his newsletter today, this morning. I'm happy to read the text. It's pretty. It's a little extraordinary because again, it is kind of shocking.
Yeah,
I'll let you go first if you want to comment on this, but it's already just such a flaw in logic,
dude. It's the reason why I just love this is Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro. Facts don't care about your feelings. Accusations of bigotry can't shut down debates. I remember this one time he was arguing with some crazy leftist college chick, and she was talking about implicit bias and how this idea of like you have some implicit bias or implicit racism or something like that. And he was like, yeah, but like, I don't know, like you don't even know what your motivations are yourself. Sometimes you don't even know those. And now you're saying what the motivations that you don't even know are your motivations are your motivations. He goes, this is just ghost hunting, man. Like, and it was such a good point just to tear apart their argument. This same guy is now, yes, if you didn't quite catch this, okay, keep this. This is literally what Ben Shapiro is doing. Ben Shapiro is saying, Megyn Kelly, you ought to be condemning Tucker Carlson for being an anti-Semite. He's not just anti-Israel. He's anti-Semitic. How is he anti-Semitic? Well, he's anti-Semitic because he said another guy wasn't anti-Semitic. Just think about the leap of that already, okay? But like obviously you could... Like, if there is someone who really hates Jews, me saying he doesn't hate Jews doesn't make me hate Jews. It might make me incorrect about this guy, but that does not, it doesn't even follow from that. But look, let's just finish the rest of the clip, Rob, because it's just more fun to trash when you actually hear here's the evidence of why Tucker Carlson's anti-Semitic.
So here's what Tucker Carlson wrote in his newsletter today, or what his newsletter says under his name. He said, is the incoming mayor a fan of Israel? Does he want America to fight its wars? Not particularly. But a Jew hater? That's a different conversation. We've never seen anything to suggest he falls into that ugly camp. If we're talking about fighting the left, defending Zoran Mamdani, who literally said that he has no opinion whether Hamas should disarm, who posed alongside the 1993 World Trade Center unindicted co-conspirator, who would not disarm, globalize the Intifada, who suggested that whenever there is a New York Police Department boot on somebody's neck, it's an IDF lacing the strings, to suggest that that's not anti-Semitic in any way. No way.
Okay, but listen.
I'm going
to give you a defense of Tucker here, and I don't need to defend Tucker because I'm not Tucker. But I'll just say, I think in general, because I know him and I listen to him and I understand generally where he's coming from. He would say his problems are with Israel, and he would say that shot that Mamdani laid against the IDF is a shot against the IDF. and Israel and how he thinks they're pro-war, not against Jews.
Okay.
And I think
all I can say is when Tucker Carlson finds himself in complete alignment with Zoran Mamdani, it is very difficult for me to believe that he does not agree with Zoran Mamdani.
Is in a place right now of the same place that Charlie was getting to toward the end of his life, the same place that some people had tried to drive me, which is you're under withering, nonstop accusations of being something you know you're not.
Well,
but from some people
you can pause it right there. I just love Megyn Kelly going, yeah, and we could end the clip there, but it's like Megyn Kelly's basically going, yeah, I think Tucker's in the same place Charlie found himself in that I find myself in, where it's like, you guys are just such like, I don't know what to, it's like, dude, honestly, I'm sorry, I'm not putting words in Megyn Kelly's mouth, and she handled this better than I would have probably, but like the idea that you go, Tucker is, I think about this, Rob, Tucker's an anti-Semite because he says this guy is not an anti-Semite, and the proof that this guy is an anti-Semite is that he refuses to condemn the phrase globalize the Intifada. Like, by the way, you know, the IDF has been involved in training American police. It's not that crazy to make a point. There's nothing anti-Jewish about talking about a foreign military that has a relationship with American domestic police. And there's nothing, his opinion about whether Hamas should disarm or should not disarm, I mean, that's a pretty I don't know. There's lots of opinions on that don't mean you hate Jews. And then again, anyway, this is just so pathetic, Rob. What can you say about this? He's a big, well then honestly, if just by extending this logic, then Megyn Kelly's an anti-Semite too, right? Because Megyn Kelly is sitting here saying Tucker's not an anti-Semite, and Tucker's an anti-Semite for saying someone else isn't an anti-Semite. So she's guilty of the same thing by transfer, like she's guilty of the exact same thing. So why don't you call her out to her face? Would it just start to sound too retarded at that point? Like how many guilt by association levels can we get to here? All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is the Tuttle Twins. We've had some great sponsors over the years, but this one is really near and dear to my heart. You've heard me talk about Ludwig von Mises and Murray Rothbard and F.A. Hayek. Well, all of their greatest works are in children's book form, thanks to the Tuttle Twins. These books are made for kids, but honestly, an adult could spend a couple hours reading through them and walk away with a solid foundation on the core concepts. They're incredible books. And get this, they've sold over 6 million copies. Think about how amazing that is. Imagine the impact that's going to have on the future. And here's something else. They also have a magazine. The Smith family household gets one in the mail every month, and each issue explains a current hot topic with a Tuttle Twin adventure, article, and activity. But the most powerful thing about these magazines is that they spark important teaching moments and conversations with my kids that I just normally wouldn't have. So please go to TuttleTwins.com/problem and get a deal on the magazine subscription. It's like $50. It's the price of a couple pizzas for a full year of mind-molding learning for a little one in your life. And they've got all types of stuff. I had my kids on their they have the hardcover books that are great for toddlers and even pre-toddlers. Like they've got a great range of everything all the way up to like older kids and stuff. So go check them out. TuttleTwins.com/problem. That's Tuttle, Tuttle, twins.com/problem. All right, let's get back into the show.
It's such a wild claim because firstly, he goes, my evidence that Tucker Carlson isn't anti-Israel but is actually an anti-Semite is that he defended that Mamdani is not an anti-Semite. And then his proof that Mamdani is an anti-Semite is all rhetoric that is criticizing Israel and is not criticizing the Jewish people. And so you got double folded. You haven't proved that Mamdani is actually an anti-Semite. And now you're labeling that Tucker is definitely an anti-Semite just because he's saying that Mamdani is not. That is not proof of anti-Semitism in any capacity. And Ben Shapiro knows it, which is why he doesn't even want to have this conversation or get the pushback from Megyn and just go, well, he can defend himself. Because he knows the game of, I just going to give a reason and then let's just move on from this and I've stated a reason.
Yeah, no, that's right. And then just everything is all so pathetic too. Like, look, even the thing, I'm speaking about this not knowing too much about it because who the hell cares? But the thing is that Mamdani took a picture. First of all, taking a picture when you're running for mayor, taking a picture means nothing, dude. It means absolutely nothing. Listen, I'm not running for mayor. I've taken pictures with all types of people, dude. People ask for a picture. It's part of it's just part of being a public person, dude. Sometimes people see you and they go, mind if I get a quick picture? And you go, sure, because what the hell? Why not? You know, and like, so it just means nothing. He's a mayor. He's going around the city. He's running for office. He can literally, you cannot say no if anyone ever asks you for a picture when you're running for mayor. So literally that means nothing. But then they also go, so he took a picture with the unindicted conspirator of the 93, which I know is a legal term, and I know they really love it. They've said that term every single day, all day long since this picture came out, because, and obviously it didn't really move the needle too much with voters, now did it? Because like, even when you're trying to make that sound bad, you know, there is something about that first word there, Rob, you know? That just really undercuts it. Like, oh, unindicted. Oh, okay, right. Meaning there were never charges brought against him, let alone a conviction of anything, meaning he's innocent or presumed innocent, right? Like, that isn't that the whole, so again, there's just nothing there. Saying globalize the intifada. Look, intifada means rebellion in Arabic, okay? And like, there was what's known as the first intifada and the second intifada. And there was violence in both, but the first intifada was largely nonviolent. The second one was very violent. But so like, the whole point of anyone going like, well, when they say globalize the intifada, now look, there might be people who mean violence by that, but like there are also people who just mean like, oh no, the whole world should be sticking up for the Palestinians to like not get treated this way. It's not that crazy that he didn't want to condemn that. And also like, why, I don't know, like, why the hell would he want to when that's his base? He's a leftist. Why the hell should he condemn what his entire base views? And you know, again, to Ben Shapiro, all this is just pathetic. Like, if you're against Israel, therefore you hate the Jews. You know, what critic of Israel is Ben Shapiro not calling an anti-Semite? It's just really just so pathetically weak.
You know, this rice-eating socialist might turn out to be anti-Semitic, but there's no
Sure.
reason to say at the moment that he is anti-Semitic. It's the same game of every time someone makes an anti-Israel comment, you go, well, he's anti-Semitic, which is this actually the same charge that you just have against Tucker Carlson is, oh, he's not just anti-Israel, he's anti-Semitic. And my proof is because he defended this other guy who also only made statements that were like, if Zoran was up there and saying, we don't have a problem with wealth. We've got a problem with Jewish landlords in this city, and we need to take back wealth from Jewish landlords. But any other wealthy landlord, that's not a problem.
Sure,
then
sure.
You've got
That
an
would be,
anti-Semite.
Yes, yes. No, that's right. But the thing is, they can't point to one thing like that. Like, there's not one thing like that where it's even been. I mean, look, I have no dog in this race. He's a commie. I don't care. Make him a Jew hater too. He's already a commie. That's so much worse. Like, who cares? But I'm just saying, like, I don't see the Jew hatred. Maybe it is there. And like you said, maybe he turns out to be one. But it's with Tucker Carlson's email. I'm on Tucker Carlson's email. I read this one. You know, the whole spirit of the thing was like, yeah, he's a commie, but like, I don't know. They're saying he's a Jew hater. That doesn't seem apparent at all. And then, of course, Ben Shapiro there. It's like, he goes, I think when you're in lockstep with Mom Donnie, like, then you're like, it's just so bad faith. It's so disingenuous. Yeah, he just said, I don't see the evidence. Is Tucker talking about free buses and rent, freezes? No. So he's not in lockstep.
And this game is not helping. I think we all saw it that I mean, listen, terrible candidates ran against Mamdani. But when they tried to turn the New York mayorship into some sort of a conversation about Israel, and he just goes, well, I'm not really all that concerned about that as the New York City mayor. I want to make things more affordable. That resonates. And then when you turn around and you go, well, this other thing is more important because at the root of that is actually anti-Semitism, you're not courting any favor. That's not, firstly, it's not anti-Semitism. And even if that was, I'm just saying, as a theoretical, if it was true, if the guy believes in, you know, if he's not looking to harm anybody, but he's like, I'm just not as focused on racial issues. When did the left become the people of no, economic prosperity needs to be second to us propping up the harmed classes, and we need to put racial issues first? I don't care what your economic policy is. What I care about is that you say that you're going to stand with the plight of the black man and women in this country.
Yeah, there's a thing because like Ben Shapiro also, you know, he does this other thing in there where he's kind of like, well, I haven't seen, you know, Tucker's not attacking the left. He's not attacking Mamdani or something like that. And it's like, there's two things on that. Number one, well, Ben Shapiro, we're attacking you and you're acting like the left. So same thing to me, man. Like, yeah, we're attacking the dude who can't take on anyone's arguments and instead shouts accusations of bigotry. And then when is asked to back them up, has the most pathetic take ever. Like, so yeah, we're criticizing you. And like, number two, what can I say? You guys made it kind of hard. I mean, look, obviously, we've talked quite a bit about how we don't like Mamdani's economic ideas. But when you run a lockdown governor who's quite literally a murderer, the most disgraced human being in America, you run him, and then the whole attack campaign about Mamdani is like, eek, he's a racist because he won't visit a foreign country and kiss their wall. It's like, yeah, you make it pretty goddamn hard to get on board with that. Yes. No, in other words, you guys, people like Ben Shapiro, attacked this guy in the dumbest possible way. You found the one thing that isn't actually something to criticize him about, that is a losing issue, and you ran on that, and now you're mad that more of us didn't pile on to your ridiculous losing issue, which is that if you have a problem, you know, like, dude, there's been, I mean, multiple reports of babies being used as target practice by IDF soldiers from doctors in Gaza. There's been like at least 6 or 7 doctors who have said that they've consistently seen babies shot in little kids. I'm talking 1 through 5-year-olds shot in the groin, shot in the head, shot in the body. And at first, one of the doctors said, you know, at first we thought there must be some like sociopath sniper, like some rogue agent here. And then they started finding it like in all different parts of Gaza, like the similar thing. Okay, there's been reports of, and again, this isn't even reports. The Israeli government said that when Hamas is slow rolling the dead remains, they're going to half the aid that's coming into the civilian population. Okay, if you got a problem with any of that, Rob, you hate Jews. Like what? I mean, what is this? It's actually more ridiculous than any accusation of racism I ever saw leveled at Ben Shapiro. You know, he would say things sometimes like, he'd be like, you know, whatever, he would say black kids are like 7 or 8 times, whatever the numbers are, more likely to be raised without a father, and that's a real problem. And then people would go, you're a racist, you hate black people. And you'd be like, yeah, that's stupid. What Ben Shapiro's doing here is dumber. It's a worse version than that. And that's it. So like, yeah, dude, I don't know. You're the whole woke right battle. You guys are just the woke left. You're the same thing as them, just only about Israel and Jews. Everything else, that's Ben Shapiro. The gloves should be off for everyone else except my group. Facts don't care about your feelings. All right. I do want to move on. Okay, I want to talk about a couple things here that were specifically, you know, kind of interesting things that have been put out there. Economic proposals that Donald Trump has made, I guess, since our last show. And one of them is the $2,000 tariff stimulus checks. And the other one is the 50-year mortgage thing that he's talking about here. And I thought they were kind of interesting topics for us to get into. I don't know. I guess I'll just start by it. I'm real curious to get your thoughts on both of these so we could go through them one at a time. But I would just, I guess, start by saying, like, man, the Trump administration is just getting more and more pathetic by the day. I just find all of this shit to be just absolutely like desperation Hail Marys that, you know, like this is something that you do when your coalition has fallen apart, which I think is kind of the message here, you know. And I've been one of the people saying, because I've seen Republicans, you know, who have been like, oh, this last week's election didn't really mean that much. These were just Democratic strongholds or whatever. And I'm like, no, I don't think that's true at all. This is a big wake-up call to Republicans. And it seems almost like maybe Trump feels the same way. But, oh, my God, talk about the worst way to handle it. To just throw the most pathetic, I'll send you all money. This is like on the level of like the kid in school who's like, I'll pay you all to come to my house type shit. Like, sure. I mean, that that might work. It might get some more people over to your house, but it is the worst, most long-term destructive and just pathetic way to appeal to voters. And then the 50-year mortgage thing just seems like a crazy scheme to me. But anyway, we could take these one at a time, whichever one you want to do first.
All right, so let's start with the tariffs, and
Okay.
I think what Donald Trump is trying to do here is he's got a Supreme Court case going on at the moment having to do with the tariffs.
Yep.
And it appears as though he will not be allowed to implement his current tariff policy because it should be under the purview of both revenue and taxes, which are under Congress. Now, there's two elements of gigantic stupidity, and these are things that I've talked about in the past. First and foremost, the fact that you're able to enact a policy and then it takes a year before it gets to the Supreme Court to find out you couldn't do it is a dumb system.
It's
There should be a
unbelievable.
secondary Supreme Court. You want to do something, you find out, am I allowed to do it? And then you go and do it. Now, here's the dumber part. Not only is the government not necessarily responsible when they get things wrong, there's already a conversation now about whether or not it's feasible to unwind a policy that shouldn't have been implemented because it might be too sloppy to give refunds back to people that have already American businesses that have already had to pay tariffs. Now, just think about how disgusting that is, that there can be government overreach that costs your business money, and then the Supreme Court goes, yes, that was illegal and they shouldn't have done that, but it's too sloppy for us to return the money that we shouldn't have taken from you. And so what Donald Trump is trying to do, in my opinion, I don't know that I've seen anyone else say this, is he wants to send direct checks out to make it even sloppier to recoup the money from the government that had been collected by tariffs. Because if the money was collected by the government and then sent out to taxpayers, it's even sloppier to clean up. So for one, I think that's part of his Hail Mary play. And the whole Supreme Court system is stupid in regards to the fact that you can enact a bad policy and then they are hesitant to punish government for the bad policy because it's messy. Stupid across the board. Now, driving up prices because there are tariffs and then handing more money to individuals to go pay on those goods is also not great economic policy if what you're dealing with is people that are upset about prices going up. Yeah. And if you want to see how sending direct stimulus checks played out, go look at go look at the inflation that took place after COVID when he sent checks directly to people's homes.
The thing is that people are there are people who are still stupid enough to look back and go like, well, it was a tough time, but Trump did send me that check. And he knows that. And he knows that there are people like that. And there's a reason why he made sure to put his name on that check in 2020, you know? And like, that's what they called it, Trump bucks, and he knows. And like, you know, there's so many things that are crazy about that. You hit a lot of the good ones, you know? But I would just say too, that the idea, even if you were going to sell the idea that like tariffs raise revenue, okay, right? Like there is some revenue that's raised from tariffs. But you're like, dude, we're $38 trillion in debt and going further into debt every minute. Like, what position are we in to say, oh, we have this surplus? Now we're going to pretend it's a surplus that's just extra sitting around there. Might as well send some checks out. It's just, it's ridiculous. I did listen to, I saw there was I heard the audio of Gorsuch at the Supreme Court, and it did not sound like he was buying it at all. Just like their ridiculous argument.
This is Trump's stupidity, as he keeps talking about how it raises revenue and, you know, or it's but now they're trying to pretend that it's not revenue or taxes, which they can't explain. Well, who bears the cost of this? And they go, well, ideally down the line it will create American jobs. And so prices will explain to me when these factories are coming and when all this stuff is being made in America. But between now and then, it sounds like the president's talking a lot about raising revenue from it. So you kind of can't pretend that this is just, a presidential policy for job increasing, which even if it was, I mean, that's central planning.
Yeah, no, that's right. And well, look, I mean, the idea that the idea that the president of the United States having the unilateral ability to just tax trade is the key to prosperity is just so ridiculous. And again, like, you know, we've been saying this whole time, it's been goofy economics this whole time. And you can never even, it seems like you can't even pin Donald Trump or his supporters down on what they're even saying tariffs do. Like, it's like, what are you saying? Are you saying tariffs make us rich because they protect industry? Are you saying tariffs are leverage to get good deals out of other countries? Or are you saying they're revenue generating? Like and it almost seems like, and look, I guess theoretically you could argue they're all three, right? But it's not a very good argument. There's a lot of flaws in it. But like, you could make that argument, but it does seem like they justify it with one. And then when you knock that one down, they move to the other one. And then you knock that one down, they move to the other one. Then you knock that one down and they move back to the first one you knocked down. Like, it's just, it's all over the place. And like, even if like, look, for each one of the arguments, like the only argument that actually stands is that, yes, you could put some pressure on another government to maybe get some concessions out of them. Okay, that is reasonable. But in terms of tariffs generating revenue, well, first of all, the problem isn't that the U.S. federal government doesn't generate enough revenue. It generate trillions of dollars every year in revenue. The problem is that they not only spend that, they spend another couple $1 trillion on top of it. That's the major problem. Okay. So it's obviously a spending issue, not a revenue issue. And I don't know, but I would venture to guess that if you just look at the tax revenue, where we got to be over $3 trillion, I'm sure, probably between $3 and $4 trillion that the federal government brings in tax revenue every year. That is bigger than any government in the history of the world. You have the biggest, most powerful government in the history of the world, just based off the revenue that the federal government collects. The fact that they want to be that much bigger, so they borrow and then print the money, doesn't really suggest that it's a revenue problem. And then in terms of the stuff, as we've talked about before, in terms of like protecting business, if that were really the case, if that really made us, well, then again, just reductio absurdum this shit. Then why not higher tariffs? Why not 5,000% tariffs on everyone? Or how about this? Just write a law that says it's illegal to trade with the rest of the world. Why not get the most protection if you believe in protectionism? And then right away, you'll start figuring out, oh yeah, that would make us drastically poorer. So anyway, it's all just been goofy economic policy. And after a while, as Donald Trump is failing across the board at so many of the other things, it's just like, I don't know. It's harder and harder to let any of this stuff go.
People just have to learn free money's a devil's deal. And the last time they sent you a check, it was because they could keep you in your homes, and you wouldn't criticize them doing another financial bailout for the big banks. And every single time they offer you free money, it just means you're going to be more in debt, and whatever thing you were going to use that free money on is going to be more expensive, which turns us to the 50-year mortgage plan. Which, by the way, I'm a big fan of freedom. If you want to walk into a bank tomorrow and the bank wants to give you a 50-year mortgage and you think that suits your needs, go for it. People love home ownership, and the idea, what's nice about home ownership is that you think, okay, I'll never be homeless because I'm going to own this thing. The problem is you also still have property taxes. So you're never not paying rent. Yeah. You're renting what you own from the government once you paid for it. Yep. And you've got the problem that people can move to your area, and all of a sudden your area can get more expensive, and that tax can go up on you, or your insurance rates can claim, and all of a sudden you can find that the thing that you've been paying into your entire life is actually not that affordable, or that you can't even continue to live there. And the problem with a 50-year mortgage is, firstly, it's going to put more people into the housing market, which means prices are going to go up. Yep. But not only that, if you're paying off your home for a full 50 years, I mean, the amount of interest you're paying on your home, the idea that you're going to make money on the thing, I mean, even if you're at like a 7% interest rate, I mean, you're really... Let's say you buy a home. I guess you're putting down $50,000 to maybe buy like a $400,000 home or something. Maybe that's best case scenario, and you're going to be paying that off over 50 years. I mean, just the idea that you wouldn't have made more money in the stock market, or that $50,000 that you put down that's going to end up being homes at a higher valuation. I don't know. It seems like a real sucker's game. It just feels like a lot of people are going to be sitting in more debt for longer and stuck in homes that they didn't actually want.
All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Hexclad. Hexclad has some of the best cookware out there. They sent us a couple of pots and pans. My wife loves them. We use them all the time. Hexclad has completely revolutionized pots and pans by combining the performance of stainless steel with the convenience and easy cleanup of nonstick. But Hexclad's innovation doesn't stop there. Their Japanese Damascus steel knives are as sharp as they are tough. Their sleek pepper mill lets you season like a pro with precision and style. Gordon Ramsay might be one of the toughest critics in the entire world, and he uses Hexclad both at home and in his Michelin star restaurants. Hexclad products also come with a lifetime warranty. These are going to be the last kitchen essentials you ever have to buy. And for a limited time, our listeners can get 10% off your order with our exclusive link. Just head over to hexclad.com/problem. That's hexclad.com/problem for 10% off. All right, let's get back into the show. I think one of the things that is in common with both of these policies, with the tariff dividend and the 50-year mortgage, is that both of them are acts of desperation. They're look, trying to give people a $2,000 check is going, shit, I know I'm tanking in the polls and I know I'm losing popularity, but at least I could get some more people to vote for the Republicans in the midterm if we just send him a check. Now, obviously, this will lead to disaster. It will make the country worse off. Right. It will make the country worse off, as it always does. But in the short term, I might be able to get through the midterms. And then this scheme with the 50-year mortgage is essentially going, well, look, we've got a real problem here. It's like the game of musical chairs is running out. There's less and less chairs. And when the music stops, we might be, the prices are going up and up, and the interest rates have been going up, and monthly payments are getting more and more unaffordable. And so what happens is that if you spread the money you're borrowing over 50 years rather than 30 years, you save a couple $100 a month on your mortgage payments. And so in the shortest of short runs, that is better for somebody, right? Now, in the long run, you're paying like almost twice as much interest to the bank. So like if you run the numbers, like if you take out like a $500,000 loan, and you could look at like what you end up paying the 30-year life of a mortgage, or you look at what you'd end up paying on the 50-year life, it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars extra that are going to the bank. So obviously, pretty good deal for the big banks, which is so weird because that always seems to be the case. Every government policy always seems to be really good for the big banks, which is always a real puzzle to put together. But so now look, it is true that like you can make creative arguments with all this stuff. So you could say that even though somebody is going to, let's say somebody is going to pay more money in interest to the big banks over this thing. Okay, they're saving money every month. And so you could argue like if they took that money they were saving every month and they invested that money, then maybe they could make up the difference or something like that. By the way, still a pretty good deal for the banks. You got to go gamble your money to see if you can make back. They're guaranteed that they get way more money or they can come foreclose on your house. Still seems like a pretty good deal for them. Not such a great deal for you. But then I guess the bigger point of all of this, Rob, is that it's just got a feel of like student loan forgiveness type thing. I mean, you're not even kind of addressing the core of the problem here. And the core of the problem here is that everything's getting too expensive. The currency debasement is catching up. The essence of the problem here really is, Rob, that simple as it is, right? We have a government that is so big we can't afford it. We can't afford the size of government that we have. This is not overly complicated. It's for pretty obvious reasons. You can only tax so much. There's even if you raise tax rates to 90%, you're not going to get that much different revenue. It affects behavior. People don't produce that much more when they're getting taxed at 90%. So you can only tax so much. And then you can actually only borrow so much. And then you start printing the money. And that's the only way to have a government this big, is to have a constant currency debasement. They can call these fancy words like monetary policy or quantitative easing, but it is no different. It is really no different than like ancient Rome diluting their gold coins, just making your money worth less. And as that happens, the money doesn't go as far. So things become more and more expensive. And that's what's destroying the middle class. It's what's destroying the young. What is it that's so big about this government? Well, It's basically two categories. Well, I mean, interest on the debt now is becoming a really big category itself, but it is the military and the entitlements. We're dead set on being a world empire, which is illegal. It is not what we're supposed to be, and it's not what the American people have ever decided to be. And then we have these giant entitlement programs that are huge transfers of wealth from the young to the old, from a poorer group to a wealthier group. And both of them are indefensible and inexcusable. But the problem is, no one, including President Trump, has the fucking balls to even mention that that's the problem. None of them have the fucking balls to say it, because you know what? If you say, hey, we might have to look at some Social Security cuts, old people don't like that. And you know, old people, Rob, they tend to vote Republican, and they tend to vote in real high numbers. You say you're going to get rid of their Medicare, old people don't really like that, and they vote in high numbers, and they vote for Republicans. So it's not politically expedient for Donald Trump to ever mention anything about entitlements. And also, there's a whole bunch of weapons contractors, and the whole establishment is the war party. So he goes, no, we'll have $1 trillion budget. That's what I call for, $1 trillion Pentagon budget, and we'll never touch the entitlements. And then you're left in a position where all you have are these harebrained schemes like this, because you can't get to the fundamental problem, which is that the prices are getting crazy expensive. It's just like college. I talked to my father-in-law about this. He bought his first house in the 70s, and it was I think it was around 2 years income. He started having kids young. So I think he bought his first house around 22, 23 years old. This is in the 1970s. It's not, ancient history, although it feels like it. I think he was making like 16 grand a year, and he bought a house for like 30 grand. Now, he did take out a mortgage. He didn't buy it in cash, but when you're talking about a mortgage that's a few $1,000s, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like that big of a thing. And it's just but he could buy a house young in his life. I heard, it was interesting today. I saw on the Ron Paul Liberty Report, shout out to the GOAT, Ron Paul and Dan McAdams. Ron Paul was talking about how his father bought a house for cash in the middle of the Great Depression. And he goes, not like it was, he goes, it wasn't like a mansion, but he goes, it's a nice house, a nice lawn, nice little property. He bought it in the middle of the Great Depression for cash. It's like we take it, much like with college, you just take it as a given that this thing costs $200,000 a year. But why the hell does it? Why should it? Why do we have to go into a 30, yet let alone a 50-year mortgage to purchase a house? It wasn't written in the stars that that's the way this has to be. It's all over this monetary policy and other government interventions. And so the thing is that there's no reason. But right now, Rob, the average age of a first-time home buyer is 40 years old. Now, there's no reason why it has to be like that, especially when you think about how much richer we are right now than in the Great Depression. On every level, how much easier we can build homes, how much better we can build homes, how much better we do everything now compared to the Great Depression. But you could buy it for cash then, and now you got to be a debt slave to the bank for life. That is crazy, okay? And there's no reason why it has to be like that. It simply doesn't. This is all just a government policy. But they're unwilling to address the root cause here. And so instead, all they can do is try to come up with these schemes that will obviously make the problem worse long term, but might get you through a midterm election. It's really pathetic.
You're 100% right that it's all a product of government spending and inflation that got us into this mess. So making more funds and capital available to people doesn't sound like a win. But in terms of, and I might have to give this more thought, but in terms of you as an individual, considering taking on a 50-year mortgage, it's just an inflation bet where I guess if you can have the capital and inflation goes to the wazoo, or it just kind of puts more people into the game of owning assets versus holding on to cash and being in the game of rooting for inflation, because then, what you owe on your house is actually going down relative to what you took on. But if over the course of this 50 years you actually see some sort of a credit crunch, or you actually see, do you really want to take a bet that in the next 50 years the check is not going to come due for the United States of America, and that the Fed has endless ability to keep flooding the market every time asset prices are coming down. Because otherwise what's going to end up happening is the capital that you put into the house, which is probably 20%, and then every year that you're paying off your mortgage, which is essentially rent, you're going to get wiped out on the little bit of capital that you have.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a concern for sure. And it's it's just, look, like I was saying before, like because of the monetary policy and because of the prices of everything going up, you've created a situation now where, like I said, first-time home buyers are 40. And that, I just think, like, it's very hard to measure exactly how destructive that is for a society. Like, it's really destructive for a society to say that, like, in my grandfather's day, in my father-in-law's day, like a 23-year-old could get a house. And oh, by the way, to just be clear here about my father-in-law's situation, I think he had 2 kids at the time. He's 23 years old. He was a truck driver, and his wife didn't work. He just bought a house when he was 23. Now, I just say this because that is like inconceivable in today's America. The idea of like a 23-year-old guy who has a job, like just a blue collar working class job, and his chick doesn't have to work, and he can just buy a home and take care of his family. She can raise his kids and he can do the working. I mean, that does not exist. Nobody listening to this knows anyone like that, or very few people do. Maybe it's certain parts of the country, but it's really rare these days. And so but what happens is, and look, even if you're not going to, well, look, if you're going to have kids, which is, just saying objectively pretty important for the next generation, but some of us have children. So if you want to have children, because of course it's not just a matter of owning or renting. It's like the reason why people don't own until their 40s because the prices are so high. It's so unachievable. And it's like, that means that stability is very unachievable, and obviously that makes it much more difficult to start a family. It's a difficult thing to start a family when you don't have any stability in your life. And waiting till 40 is a real problem because, that's pretty late in the game to do that. But then even if people who don't have kids, just there's something for the tranquility, for the stability of being able to own property. Like there's something really important about that being achievable for like the average person in society. Because when you own property, and this isn't only the case if you own property. I mean, this is also the case if you just like, if you own stuff, or if you are, have meaningful relationships in your life or meaningful work in your life. But the more that you have all of those things, the more invested in your society you are, the more you care about it. Like it's just, the more you own, the more skin in the game you have, the more of a stake you have, the more stability you have. All of those things are enormously positive forces for the cohesion of a society. And it really tears, I mean, we see this right now. It really tears things apart. And particularly when young men, okay, and I mean, like, it's got to be the average man. Because today we kind of live in a situation where, like, if you're, I think, whatever, like, if you're like elite level, like if you're like the best looking, like most athletic, like coolest guy, there's wide open paths for you, I guess, as there always are. And then that's true for women too. If you're like the hottest girl, you could, but for average people, just like the regular person, and particularly for young men, if the average 22-year-old young man sees no reasonable path to where he could ever theoretically like be able to provide that type of stability for a woman, be able to provide that type of life for himself, and they don't have a good job, and they don't have status, and they don't have anything like meaningful in their life, that is dangerous. That's when young men become radical and become violent and become destructive. And so it's like, it's like these government policies, even something like that just seems removed from all of this. Like, oh, we're just talking about monetary policy here. But like, you're talking about a lot more than that. You're talking about the health of your civilization. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Kalshi. I've been telling you about them for quite a while now. Kalshi is a prediction market where you can bet on just about anything that has a clear outcome. And you can see where the markets are trending on any of these things. So you can see what people are betting on, where inflation's going to be, or who's going to be the next mayor or governor or president. And it's very interesting because you get information when people are putting their money up that you can't otherwise get. And you can also bet and win and have some fun. So go check them out. Kalshi.com. Join the over 5 million users who trade on politics, culture, even the weather. Kalshi.com. Go have some fun. All right, let's get back into the show. So anyway, Donald Trump's just terrible.
It's just such a backwards approach to figuring out financial products that are going to indebt people for longer to make more cash available for them to purchase something that they can't currently afford. That just doesn't sound like a win to me.
Yeah, especially when like so many of the answers are just so obvious. Like you're like, oh, well, like.
Maybe if we give you some of the capital for free up front and we give you a lower interest rate for the first couple years, and then it goes up later and maybe you make more money later. But, you know, if interest rates really skyrocket, oh, great, you got the 2008 financial mortgage crisis again.
Yeah, right. Again,
or
it's
why not go with Kamala Harris's plan? Just give people $30,000 up front so that they have most of what they need for the initial down payment, and pretend like that's not just going to increase all the cost of owning a home and indebting people for longer.
Yeah,
the college is the perfect example. They made loans available if you wanted to go to school, and colleges went, great, we can charge these people more money. And then you had more people leaving colleges more in debt, and you want to know why people don't own homes.
Yep. That's pretty much it, right? And like it's unbelievable. And there's, you know, no matter how much you see it, like it's weird because once you see it, I guess like if you're just not thinking about it, maybe you don't, but like with college, with healthcare, with childcare, with housing, isn't the fundamental question is like, why are these prices so high? It's just crazy that it seems like people could have a whole conversation about the topic and that never comes up. That it's like, wait, but why did these prices get so out of reach? And, you know, it just seems obvious that like you should ask that question because that's the problem you want to solve. So you might want to know what caused it. And like in the case, you know, in the case of college, it's obviously the loans. And then in the case of housing, it's not much different. And, you know, there is something also like, you know, as you said, Rob, and I totally agree with you, right? As long as you have property taxes, and in some ways you could argue that property taxes are like the most evil tax. I'm not saying I agree. There's arguments, but like there is something about it where it really does, it essentially means communism, right? Because like if you have property taxes, well, what you're really saying is that the government owns all of the land. I mean, essentially, even if you pay off your mortgage, you're renting. You're renting from the government. If you don't make your payment, they come and take it from you. That's what a landlord does, right? That means it's theirs. Like what, you know, if I own a house and I don't live in it, what meaningfully makes it mine? Well, it's mine because I get to set what the price is. And if you don't pay it, I'll take it back from you. It's the same thing with the government. And so once you have this, you have a situation essentially where the government owns all of your homes. But then you look at like the big banks that give you, well, like what loans are they giving you, Rob? None of these banks have any money. They don't have anything. They have a fraction of what people have put into the banks, right? Like in other words, they don't even have the deposits that all of us see on our statements. You know how you like to think that like if you see in your checking account that there's $5,000, you're like, they have five. No, they don't. They don't have it, you know? Now you could take the whole $5,000 out and they'll give it to you. But if everybody tried to take their balance out, they don't have nearly enough. So they don't have this money. The Fed prints the money and loans it to them at basically 0% interest or very, very low interest. And then they loan it out. It's essentially like, you know, it's just, it's a double whammy of, in essence, the government or the banking apparatus, which is a subset of the government, always just owns the home. And like I don't know, it screws over regular Americans. And also it's just bad. It's bad for the soul of the nation. It's bad for the spirit of supposedly free people that everybody's got to sit here and rent from the government is essentially what it comes down to. Screw that. Final word to you, Rob. What do you got?
Hail Marys from Trump. He's losing his shit. So
Yep.
I'll send you a check and I'll figure out how to get you a home.
It's not good. All right. We'll catch you guys tomorrow with a brand new episode. See you then.